Neil Warnock is unbeaten in 5 matches and has dragged Huddersfield 2 points away from the relegation zone in the Championship. And Roy Hodgson has turned goal-shy Palace into sharpshooters. What does that tell you about experience?
Well, it's worked. It's worked at the moment. It's working in terms of hiring managers to get you out of trouble, and that's a good omen for Leicester City. Hiring Dean Smith, of course, not as old as those two, but experienced.
Nowhere near as old.
As old as those two. But Roy's doing a fantastic job coming into that football club. An easier run of games, it must be said, in what Patrick Vieira had. But 47 shots in 2 games is tremendous, and no one expected that from a defensive style manager in Roy Hodgson.
7 goals in 2 games as well. They could have had about 7 in the second half against Leeds United.
What he's done is released the shackles to the forward players, and Jordan Ayew popping up with 2 goals as well. He's not known for his goal scoring, and he's popping up with 2 goals. And Neil Warnock, absolutely brilliant. He takes the pressure off the team in terms of
before we should add context here. He is like your best mate or great uncle, isn't he?
Oh, he's my favourite manager alongside Sir Bobby Robson. He's tremendous. I done well for him, and if you do well for him, he repays you in terms of love.
Didn't he used to massage your feet?
Yeah, he's a chiropodist. Yeah, he used to do my feet.
What do you mean, do your feet?
He wouldn't let anyone else like trim my toenails and stuff. He'd do it. He'd have his little glasses on, little white coat. He'd have his bag of nails, nail tools. I don't even know what they're called, and he would do my feet. If it was raining, he'd have an umbrella. He'd pull me out of training. He'd say, "You stand with me, son. Let the rest get wet." So I'd be under the umbrella. I loved him, and Didn't he used
to let you have KFC as well when everybody else was banned?
Well, no, the KFC wasn't banned. We'd all have a bargain bucket, but they'd make whoever's going, they'd make him get me hot wings. I was the only one that was allowed hot wings, to be honest. No one else was allowed them. Just me and him.
Okay,
We'd sit next to each other on the bus.
What does he do? Yeah, hold hands. What does he do that other managers don't do?
He takes the pressure off you as an actual team. When you're low down the division, which Huddersfield, even his interview, he said the other day, I know it was funny, it's gone viral, it's a joke, it's one of those, what's the secret? Well, I'm a good manager. That there's taken the pressure off the team. He's put the pressure solely on himself, that if he starts losing, well, you said you're a good manager. He's so smart in terms of what he says. I think he's mellowed out as well, the older he's got. When I was at Palace with him, he was fiery on the sideline, fiery in the dressing room. But that's what he does. You have to work for Neil Warnock. If you don't work, you're not playing. And I think everyone buys into that.
Do you think he gets the credit that he deserves? Or is he someone who is pigeonholed with a certain tag and has been labelled in a certain way and people don't appreciate how good he is?
Yes, in the public eye, yes, I think he's pigeonholed, as you rightly said. I think in players' eyes who have played for him, more often than not many people have got a bad word to say against him. Even the players that he digs out, and he would dig out players in the dressing room, and rightly so, but Monday morning it's forgotten. He'll either call you in and he'll tell you why he done that. He never dug me out. I just want to put that out there. He never dug me out, but he'd have his laptop
and everybody else was standing.
So he'd have his laptop and he'd come in, they'd watch the video if you concede, and he'd pick out, so the centre half's made a mistake, and he'd come in and he'd lambast the defender. And even if the mistake was in the first half, the goal was in the second half, he'd still blame him for that goal. So you can understand, but I love seeing him back in football. Football needs characters like him, and Roy Hodgson as well, who's doing a great job at Palace already.
One of the things that sort of became a discussion point around Graham Potter, and I don't want it to be sort of like a pick on Graham Potter moment, was about the way that he carried himself and the way that he imposed himself on the players. And yeah, it was very kind, very nice, and he tried to look after a big group at Chelsea. It didn't quite work out for him. But personality does go a long way in this game, doesn't it, when you're in the dugout? And sometimes you have to be a little bit ruthless. You have to set a really tough standard. You don't need to be bawling out someone. You don't have to show toxic masculinity in order to be able to get your message across. But you do need to set rules, standards that cannot be dropped beneath.
Absolutely. You need to make decisions and stick by them, and you need to make brave decisions. That's why you get paid the big bucks as managers nowadays. And if you're, for instance, Neil Warnock, you had to buy into what he wanted. My first training session with Neil Warnock, go and get your shin pads on. Everyone wear their shin pads. You're doing a 7v7 tournament and you have to give it your all. He didn't care about challenges going in, and you have to buy into that. And if you do, and you're one of his players, he will look after you for a long time.
And he'll get you a couple of hot wings as well.